All right, guys. Our next guest is a legend and icon of combat sports and pro wrestling, holding wins in the UFC, Pride, Strikeforce, K1, Dream, Pancrase, Affliction, and many others. And to this day, the youngest ever UFC heavyweight champion. Currently signed to Bellator, he takes on Marcin Różalski this Friday, the 23rd of October, in a bare-knuckle boxing match at Genesis. He is the Warmaster, Josh Barnett. Welcome for the very first time to Submission Radio. How are you, man?
Oh, doing well. Things are going along. I mean, the days are counting down. The fight is coming up.
I know. We're all excited to see it, but we got to ask, man, of all the fights, all the rule sets you fought under, why bare knuckle boxing and why now?
Availability, because when we booked this thing, no one was doing events but the UFC. And so I was looking abroad to find a place I could go and get in the ring where they had opened up enough. And that brought me to my connections in Poland. Then it's also just like it used to be, just like how I started out, except with no headbutts and no grappling in this one. But, you know, to hell with it, right? It'll work out.
Yeah, I love it. It was actually only announced on September 30th, which was like 20 days ago. So I think from announcement to the actual fight is, 23 days? How did it all come together? And did you really get such a quick, notification about this?
Oh, yeah. No, I've been training for this already for months. And we worked it out. I have, as someone that is involved in doing business, not just as an MMA fighter, but in other regards, internationally, and all the connections I've made over the years, I just reached out. And as a fighter and as someone who wanted to get in the ring this year, I just needed to make it happen. And with all that was going on in other aspects of my life, with as busy as it's been with all the whiskey, the pro wrestling stuff, new merch, new website, and a litany of other projects that are in the works that I haven't even put out yet. I needed the stuff needed to be scheduled in. It needed to be planned out. And while bare knuckle boxing was not something I was actively seeking out, I've been paying attention to it and how it's making its name known now in the combat sports sphere. And so when the opportunity came about, it was like, well, of course, why would I turn away an adventure? Like, that's part of the reason to do this kind of stuff in the first place, to live your own Street Fighter 2 version of life when possible. And seeing as a ring was open and an opponent was available, well, I'm your guy. I'm your mercenary.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we expect nothing less of the Warmaster. I'm just wondering, what do you think about bare knuckle boxing's kind of rise in the last few years? You know, there wasn't a whole lot of it, and now all of a sudden, a lot of former UFC guys and girls are going over to different bare knuckle boxing organizations, and there was this almost like MMA Part 2, where there was this controversy about bare knuckle boxing, and I remember we had people on the show saying, you know, it's kind of rich for people like us to be looking down on bare knuckle boxing when, you know, we do love MMA, which is combat sports. So what was your sort of take on it? Did you come around to it instantly, or did it take a bit of time for you?
It seemed natural to me, like it was no big deal. But then again, I'm from an older generation in terms of how mixed martial arts and combat sports is viewed. People have very short memories in this modern day and age. And I don't just mean short memories in terms of things like culture or, you know, sports in this case. Well, it's sports, culture, entertainment with mixed martial arts. Most people, I mean, the joke used to be on some of the forums would be like, oh, what was their the creation date of their account? Oh, they came on after watching The Ultimate Fighter. You know what I mean? So they don't know a damn thing. They're ignorant to all hell, and they have no idea about things like Pancrase or possibly even Pride and older organizations and fighters that have been around. But by and large, I mean, there's like a real memory hole in the West these days where people forget or have no concept of history of nearly anything anymore. And so the idea that bare knuckle boxing seems so wild, or that current MMA fans, journalists, you know, people within the business element of it, as well as the fan base, could be so incredulous or critical of even the concept of bare knuckle boxing. It's like, it just shows that how far we've come, yet how much we've already forgotten. You know, I remember being backstage at a fight. I think it was, I think it was a UFC, something like that, and somebody, I was wearing a Pancrase shirt, and they looked at it, and this was an active UFC fighter at the time, or maybe even Strike Force or something like that. And they just looked at it and they go, "What's Pancrase?" And I just thought, "Oh, you got to be kidding." Yeah.
Unbelievable. We're guessing right there in the locker room, right there, you put him in a leg lock and taught him his lesson, Warmaster.
Well, I had to put on my pro wrestling trunks and my shin guards first. And they're like, the first thing they thought is, "That's an interesting outfit. I never would have picked you for salmon colored." But after that, it was like one round kick, a palm strike to the face, and yeah, a leg lock.
Well, let's talk about your run a little bit, because we want to go back in time. I mean, it's been a crazy journey for you since your last fight back in 2016 when you beat Andrei Arlovski. You signed with Bellator in April of last year, signed the contract live on Ariel's show, and you were supposed to face Ronnie Marks at Bellator 235, but were forced to withdraw due to severe illness. I'm wondering, Josh, what exactly happened?
I have no idea to this day. I don't have antibodies for coronavirus, but whatever it was that came over me, and it didn't give me symptoms of food poisoning, because I've had that before. Definitely not fun, but it's one of those things where you know it when you've got it, and it's usually quite short-lived. Whatever this was, it hit me hard, completely wrecked me, and I had felt perfectly fine the night before. Nobody else got sick at the group dinner that we had, and we were at a Mastro's or something like that in Hawaii. Not to say that a high-end steakhouse couldn't somehow have some contamination. I mean, it's just a possibility, even very slight, but that's life. But I woke up in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m., and I was just shivering. I had the sweats, and I just thought to myself, "Oh no, this ain't good." And I cranked the heat up in my room and threw the covers on, and it just did nothing. I couldn't break my fever. I had to go to the ER that morning, get IVs, and it was just, there was no way it was going to happen, and I just couldn't believe it. And whatever it was, man, it was not fun, because while I was able to find some relief by the next day, I felt like the living dead, but I could move and I could operate. But I know that had to have been because of all the IVs and everything they pumped me full of on the very day, because they loaded me up trying to get me to some state to see if I could be able to recover, but it just wasn't going to happen. But then back home, it took me probably another 2 weeks or so before I really even felt like I was even 80% again. So whatever it was definitely not fun.
Man, I can't imagine what a disappointment that would be to put in a fight camp and then like that close to the fight for it to fall through. And I remember the video that I think Bellator put up of you in the hotel room, and you could see it in your face, that you weren't messing around, that something definitely hit you hard. And then of course UFC Bellator 241, the fight was rebooked. And then I believe it was reported that there was a failed medical requirement according to the Mohegan Tribe Department of Athletic Regulations. What exactly was that all about?
It's complicated, but the simple aspect of it is that everything all seemed on the up and up. We were obviously in communication for months leading into it, and I had immediately had my manager get on the horn to Scott Coker to rebook the fight as soon as possible. I felt terrible for Ronnie and Ray, his coach, and I felt terrible for all the fans. And I obviously was incredibly unhappy with going through a full fight camp, feeling good, and then having that opportunity torn away from me after having to sit on the sidelines for 3 years. for something that was beyond a shadow of a doubt not my fault. And fighting through every inch of all of that BS, only to then still not be able to get in the ring. Then what, like 2 weeks out or something like that? I don't know exactly whose decision it was, but they basically just changed their mind, and that was that. And
what do you mean? Who did that? The commission, or what happened?
Someone in the commission. Somebody made a decision, like an overriding decision, and said no. And so it's like, okay, well, I mean, there you go. It is the issue that when you deal with athletic commissions, it's always steeped in a lot of discretion, their discretion. So they can do what they want. They can give it. They can take it away. They can change their mind. There's no, you can't be like, well, no, you passed the statute of limitations. And in some cases, I understand why. This is not an exact science, somebody's body, or things involved with what's necessary, or at least what they consider necessary to get in the ring. So lo and behold, that happens, which completely torpedoes another opportunity to get in the ring out of nowhere. I just started to feel like, is the universe conspiring against me? And I felt terrible for Ronnie. They did find an awesome opponent as a replacement in Matt Mitrione, who I love and is tough as nails. I know he's had a bit of a slide recently, but that guy is awesome. I've trained him before and worked with him. Great guy. And I felt like him and Ronnie could have a good scrap, and at least, Ronnie's camp wasn't wasted from all this. And then the kicker to it all is, regardless of what happened with me, the whole event got canceled because of a pandemic anyways. So when you sit back and you go like, oh, is the universe conspiring against me? It's like there was legitimately no way that I was going to get that fight. And it's just, it was devastating. But as things progressed through this year, I started reaching out to my connections, and this is one of the reasons why I'm with Bellator, is for the freedom to do things like this, to be able to do Josh Barnett's Bloodsport and other pro wrestling endeavors, and to have the freedom to work with Bellator as we maximize who I am as a fighter in the entertainment element, but also allow me to go out there and do what it is that I want to do in the world. So this opportunity presented itself. Poland was going to start doing events sooner than the U.S. was, minus the UFC. And so, all right, let's get going. Let's get in the ring.
I want to talk Genesis, but just last thing on the whole commission thing. What was the reason they used to justify pulling you from it? And is this something that, I imagine at some point you're going to go, back to Bellator, make your Bellator debut? Is this something that could rear its head in the future where, a commission could just, change their mind again?
I don't think so. And also every commission is different. The Mohegan Sun is not the Nevada State Athletic Commission. It's not the California State Athletic Commission. So every commission has its own way of operating. They'll have their own statutes. And with the Mohegan Sun, it was their decision. So do I think it's going to be a problem in the future? No, not necessarily. But what they say is, whatever happens in life, you have to learn from it. And that means it's not just about things that happen in the negative that don't work out your way, but things that work out in the positive, which is often a place where we neglect to look backwards and see, well, why did it work in my favor? It's not necessarily guaranteed. So we should understand what were the paths and processes to success, as well as, okay, it was a success, but could it have been a bigger success? And so I think that we're now fair and familiar with what we're dealing with here. And so I don't envision it to be much of an issue. I do know that wherever I end up fighting next in the States, especially, different commissions will have different requirements for people over 40 years old. And I'm not always looking forward to all the extra testing, because I've heard some of them can be just like a pain in the ass, where God, I forget there was one. It was Marvin. God, it was what's his name? I want to say Marvin Hagler, but he's not Marvin Hagler. Marvin Eastman was telling me about fighting over 40, I think it was, and he was like, yeah, they did some thing where they started blowing air in your eyes and doing all. I'm like, that doesn't sound fun. Then they want you to get on treadmills and try to burn you out and do all this stuff to check your heart and your oxygen levels. And it's like, running sounds horrible. Running sounds even worse in a doctor's office with a mask strapped to your face. I was like, ugh, no, But whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to get punched in the face anyways, I guess.
It sounds like the 50 Cent in the club video or something is the way they test people these days. Let me ask you this quickly, Josh, though. I did mention 2016 with Andrei Arlovski was that last fight, and it's been so long now for you, and you've had to overcome all this stuff. At any point during this process, did you just think, look, I've had an incredible career, I'm going to maybe call it and move on to something else? Or how hard has it been to stay positive and believe that you'll be making this comeback? We're in 2020 now. And that was 2016, your last fight.
Well, there wasn't supposed to be a comeback in the first place of any sort. But, yeah, I mean, the idea of closing this chapter of my life is always there. And I will do that. I will close this book when I know that that moment has come. I have no interest to keep doing this beyond the passion or beyond the capabilities of my mind and my body. But there was no way that I was going to let it end like that. That's just not going to happen. And that's really what it comes down to is if you get a chance to choose how you can go out, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess one of the interesting things about this bare knuckle boxing fight is that unlike a lot of other ones, elbows will be allowed. How much of a difference maker do you think that makes? And also, I wonder if this is something that really sort of speaks to you because, we see you as just you are the Warmaster. So I feel like with this one, it's just guaranteed that it's going to be bloody and it's going to be violent, something that I'm sure you're going to, relish every moment of.
It is my wheelhouse. But, I mean, hopefully all the blood's his. But knowing how bare knuckle boxing is, there's a very small percentage that it's going to work out that way. I also can add that there is limited clinching, so you can dirty box in this event too.
Wow! And what do you make of Marcin, your opponent, going into this one?
He's a warrior. He's tough, man. He's got far more kickboxing matches under his belt than he has MMA, but we're the same age, and he's a guy that is coming up in the years as an athlete where he's grappling with the element of what do I do next? And he's got the heart of a warrior as much as I can figure out. So the idea of doing something that isn't fighting is a daunting task. So I expect him to make the absolute most of every second he gets in the ring.
People talk about things like ring rust and cage rust. I wonder how you tackle that coming off this 4-year layoff, and if it even is a factor for someone like yourself who has been fighting for the last few decades in so many different rule sets and organizations.
I think a lot of that has to do with your training in the gym, and it also has to. I think the majority of it is your mental state and how you approach things. I don't care about the crowds. I don't care about television. The live moment is a different feeling, but I know what it's like to be the champion of the world. So all I ever have to do is just let me exist, let my work happen, and not really be overly concerned with anything else other than being in the moment and just letting the hands fly.
All right. Well, we're excited to see you make this big comeback this week, but obviously a lot of people looking to your future and excited to see you make that Bellator debut. And the name that a lot of people bring up is Fedor Emelianenko. I mean, how important is it for you to finally have that elusive Fedor fight before it's all said and done for you?
Well, I've said it before. There's only two things that I actually really care about. Well, I shouldn't say. Well, no, I can put it that way. My only real targets, two targets, essentially in Bellator, and no disrespect to Ronnie Marks at all, is the title or Fedor. And beyond that, you know, everything else I have to navigate in a different space. But those are the two things. That's what I signed up for. That's all I want.
What would it mean to you to finally? I guess which one would be more important for you, the title or the Fedor fight? Just because it's been so many years in the making.
The Fedor fight, to be able to get in the ring with my friend while there's still an opportunity to do so, to face one of the greatest heavyweights of all time for sure, and put it on the line. See the two of us finally get a chance to lock horns. And that's not to say anything against the Bellator title, because I would love to add another prestigious title belt to my collection. But you know, the title is only as worthwhile as the man that holds it. So I guess have Fedor fight for the title, win, and then I fight him. I mean, yeah, you can't ask for anything better than that.
Do you think that would ever be something like the perfect? I guess people are always looking for the perfect way to exit the sport, right? Do you think that would be like the ideal retirement fight? Imagine either beating Fedor or winning the title, or do you feel like something like that would really just prolong your career, you know, to sort of do so well and hold a belt or beat a legend in Fedor?
I would say more the former than the latter, but you just never know.
Obviously, a lot of stuff happening in the heavyweight divisions all over the world. Just quickly, Josh, I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on what's happening in the UFC? Since you've left, the heavyweight division has seen a few changes. You got Stipe as the champ, and you've got John Jones wanting to move up to heavyweight to potentially fight him. Love to get your thoughts on that. What do you think about the state of the division now that you're gone?
Well, there's plenty of talent there, and Stipe looked fantastic in the rematch. Actually, far better than he looked in his first victory. I thought the first fight between the two of them kind of turned into a shit show, and I mean that in regards to knowing both fighters and how skillful they are, and how, you know, fight IQs went out the window. They just got incredibly sloppy for their technical capabilities, and from watching their earlier fights, and it was just interesting that it just degraded in such a way, and it just kind of became a you know, mindless guts fest in terms of who was tougher. And then out of nowhere, Stipe just changed things up, went to his liver, and then Cormier just was unable to make any adjustment whatsoever. And then, you know, Stipe put him away. Like, all right. And then the next fight, completely different story. More of their true capabilities in terms of the full potential, all skill sets put on the line. And you know, I mean, I can't speak for Cormier as far as, like, I'm not training him, I'm not his coach, I'm not in his head, but he did not really employ much of a game plan built around his strengths. And you know, he was dominating the fight first round. Stipe couldn't get off his back. He kept chopping his leg and taking him down, and then he just threw the whole game plan away. And fight number two, which then degraded into the sort of brainless slugfest that it turned into. Come fight three, I figured, well, you know, if Cormier goes back to his camp and goes, okay, well, we're gonna stick to a game plan. We're gonna force him into areas where he wasn't as successful. And I mean, you know, Cormier was untouchable in that first round against Stipe in the second fight, and he didn't execute it. And so there could be a lot of reasons for that. And he's getting up in age. And when you look at age for Cormier, you have to consider his Olympic and amateur wrestling career. That takes a lot out of the body, a huge toll on the body, especially with the years of weight cutting on him and all that stuff too. So, you know, his athletic lifespan has seen a lot of generations already from the work it's put through it. And Stipe looked great too, which it's great to see a fighter go out there and fight with the utmost of their skills. Although it's great to see them when they're just hands at their shoulders, just biting down their mouthpiece and doing whatever it takes to get the fight done. But you know, all of heavyweight MMA suffers a bit from, like, limited skill sets. It's just like a bunch of sluggers that have a bit of wrestling for the most part, or wrestlers that have a little bit of slugging. There's really no diverse games. There's not like a lot of kickboxers using more angles and footwork and mixing up their stuff. I mean, Brandon Vera, when as a heavyweight, while I know he was not the top of the rankings, but when he's working his game and his confidence is up, he's hitting from different angles. He's hitting out of different stances. So as far as stand up is concerned, and then there was guys like Nogueira, and when he's able to fully execute, even Alexei Olenek, watching a guy with such high level grappling skills in the MMA world, but the well-rounded element seems to have taken a bit of a back seat over the past 10 years, and guys seem to be really more focused just on punching and wrestling, or wrestling and punching with conditioning.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying, and just on DC. It's interesting. There's a video of him wrestling around with Khabib because he's in Abu Dhabi at the moment, and when they sort of were playing around, DC was like, my knee. So you can see just how much that career has taken a toll on him. One more thing I want to get your thoughts on, Josh. As we sort of look forward to Genesis, and obviously mentioning DC and his reason for being there in Abu Dhabi. Obviously, Khabib is going in there against Justin Gaethje this weekend. As a phenomenal wrestler and grappler yourself, I'm just curious, when you look at Khabib's game, what do you think is it about his game that makes him so successful, that makes him so dominating, and his ability to just break guys?
Conditioning and pressure. Plus, I'm sure he must be strong as hell. And he's really great at, once he gets a hold of you, pinning and riding. Which is something that is often undervalued and underappreciated in MMA. When you watch Curtis Blades versus Ngannou the first time, and I was there for that, it came down to pinning. Like, Ngannou is not much of a ground guy, which is, by the way, not to say that he's clueless, because it's just not something that he has to employ that much. It's not his strong suit, and it doesn't benefit him as much. But Curtis couldn't keep him down. He just could not stop the underhook escape. Or even when dealing with Derek, why am I forgetting his name? The Black Beast.
Derek Lewis?
Derek Lewis. I don't see any grappling capabilities out of him. I also realize he's like Ngannou, where he's not really going to use it so much. I'm sure he has, skills, definitely in terms of wrestling and things, but, he's the guy, if you can pin him, he ain't getting up, right? He's not going to have a whole bunch of different escapes besides being big and just shoving a guy off, which can work. But as a heavyweight, if you're continually trying to employ that, you're gonna fall apart. You're just not going to be able to continue to keep moving those big guys around that way with just sheer power and athleticism. So Khabib, dealing with guys who aren't quite as big, but dealing with guys that are highly mobile, active, they're going to be fighting up and down and going every which way. He finds a way to keep them pinned and keep riding them. And as he rides them, he wears them down, fatigues them, and continues to keep scoring. He's got stand-up and obviously great ground, but in his stand-up, he has a tendency, if the threat of the takedown isn't enough to keep the opponent off balance, he takes some pretty flush shots, and that's Gaethje's thing. McGregor is a one-punch knockout guy potentially too, but I don't think he's got the one-punch power like Gaethje does. And if Gaethje can land that shot, it will really give issues to Khabib. But it really, I think, comes down to early fight is going to be Gaethje, his chance of winning. But as the fight goes long, I just don't see it going any way but Khabib's.
Do you think Gaethje's Division I wrestling plays a factor at all with that kind of background and pedigree?
Oh, for sure, but he's not going to go out there and start wrestling. He's going to go out there and start trying to murder somebody with his hands. And when you're doing that, you're not in a wrestling position. You're not settled and set to be a wrestler. Now, maybe he's changed up the way his camp has been structured and put more emphasis on it. I would happen to think that he does, but I would also say you wouldn't want to take him away from what he's good at.
All right. Well, speaking of murdering people with their hands, as we wrap up, what is the official prediction for your fight this Friday in Poland?
Blood and glory. That's about it. I don't know. I mean, it's 3 3-minute rounds, so it's going to be a sprint. I'm not sure if either one of us are going to go down in this fight, but we're definitely going to be bleeding. I think the difference is going to be one, if it gets into the dirty boxing element, I'm not gonna be beat in that space. And I would happen to think that he probably isn't training, or he wasn't planning to make it this much of a clinch fight. But the other thing is, I think I just got plain better and faster hands. So it's about hitting and not getting hit as much as possible. But we'll see how it goes when this guy is lining up his big right hook.
Well, there you go, guys. Josh Barnett versus Marcin Różalski at Genesis 1. This Friday, the 23rd of October, it is going to be the 24th here in Australia and New Zealand. Due to the time difference, you can watch it at kswtv.com. And, of course, follow the man at Josh L. Barnett. Man, I can't wait. It's been such a long time coming for the Warmaster to return to active competition. It's going to be a sweet thing to watch, man. Thank you so much for your time, Josh. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.